It's true that I read all the bills that I'm going to vote for. If I know I'm against it to start with, as I tell my constituents in a very pro-gun area, pro-Second Amendment area, as I always tell them, if it's anti-gun, I don't need to read it, I'm against it. Like that. But if I'm going to vote for it, I want to know what's in there, because even if I like the general concept, there could be something on line 42 on page 83 that is just anathema. And so I try to take care to read the bills that I'm going to vote in favor of. If you come and see me, it doesn't mean I've already read your bill, but before I co-sponsor it or vote on it, I will have read it. So I appreciate it greatly. I noticed sitting here in the front, my former chief, Kelly McCullum, who was with me for 13 years. James has done a fabulous job for me in the last year and 3/4, but I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Kelly as well. There's some other staffers, and I would never finish. And that's the danger also with, if you get me started about birds, it will be 10 o'clock before we get out of here. And everybody will be sneaking out the back door to be me and one other person in the room. I just can't talk about my priorities without talking about today and yesterday. And I appreciate the moment of silence very, very much. America is based on ideals. And the very core ideal is that there are certain unalienable rights granted by the Almighty. That ideal, whether it be from the left or the right, whether it be foreign or domestic, is constantly under attack. We saw that on 9/11 from foreign terrorists. We saw that yesterday from an unknown terrorist in the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It doesn't matter whether you're on the right or the left. Trying to stop free discourse of ideas in the United States is just plain wrong, particularly when you use violence to do so. And so it is a bit of a somber day, and it makes my priorities, when you look at the big vision and the fact that it's constantly under attack, but every now and then we're reminded of those attacks, kind of makes my visions the future of the Health Subcommittee appear fairly minor. All right, enough of that. I'll go over a few priorities and then we'll open up for some questions. Obviously, rural healthcare in my district's very rural. I mean, my populous area is Blacksburg, Martinsville, part of Roanoke County. Those are my big populous areas, and as I was telling somebody the other day, in my section of Roanoke County, if you know where you're going, you might not know where you're going, but if you know where you're going, you can be at a farm in 5 minutes. So that's our idea of metropolitan. You're 5 minutes away from a farm instead of 1 minute away from a farm. And so it's same true in Blacksburg. I mean, you may not, if you go to a football game there, you may not realize it, but you're really close to a bunch of farms. In fact, Price's Fork Road, which has all kinds of political signs now because there's a divide in the family, has signs for both parties, and it's on the Open Chain Farm, which is literally walking distance. It might be a mile, but it's walking distance to Virginia Tech's campus. So rural healthcare is going to be important. I'm big on transparency, and it's pretty simple, whether it be PBMs, 340B, or royalties on research being done by NIH folks. It's pretty simple. I don't feel I can make good policy if I haven't read the bill, and I don't feel I can make good policy in all of those areas if I don't have all the data that's available to me. So when we're talking about healthcare, I want as much data as I can get. I don't know that I can consume it all, because having done this job now for a few weeks, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff coming across my desk. I'm trying to absorb it all. Give me a little bit of time to get it all tucked into my brain. I'll do my best. But I still believe that if we're going to focus on something, if we're going to try to improve something, we have to have all the data that we can get on the table. And that means that agencies and in healthcare, it means companies that, yes, they're private businesses, but when the United States government, I'm not saying I like that, but when the United States government is by far the largest provider or payer of healthcare services in the United States, we have to make good decisions. Again, may not ought to be that way, but that's the way it is. And as the health chair, I've got to make good decisions, and I can't do it if I don't have the data on what's going on. So I want transparency on all those areas I mentioned, and probably a lot more I haven't even thought about yet. Drug shortages, domestic manufacturing, I don't think there's any question we have to bring back manufacturing, particularly of medicines and the active pharmaceutical ingredients in those medicines. We have to bring them back to the United States. And when I say that, I'm not saying that we have to have 100% of it here. I'm not even saying we have to have 50%. I do think we ought to have 25%. Is that a magic number? No, I just pulled it out of the air. Somebody came back and said we could get away with it at 12.5. Okay, that might be right. Give me the data, we'll figure it out. But the reason I believe that is that if we have the capability of doing it, then should the Chinese and or the Indians decide to close us off, and they're the biggest producers of that, as you know, if they decide to close us off because of some kind of international dispute, we have the capability very quickly of ramping up because we have somebody here that's already making that active pharmaceutical ingredient. And if we don't have anybody here that knows how to do it, it will take us a whole lot longer to ramp up and be prepared and be ready to go. I mean, that was one of the great secrets in World War II, is that while we may not have had as much production going on as we needed, we already had the capability to make everything we needed. We improved it as we went by, but should we find ourselves in some kind of, whether it be a Cold War or a hot war, or just a trade dispute, we need to be prepared to ramp up American production of whatever it is we're going to need, and basic medical supplies is and ought to be at the top of the list. Agency reform, and I'm just going down bullets and then you all can ask questions. I'm a big believer we got to go into agency reform. There are all kinds of ideas. I was meeting with a Democrat last night after votes on some FDA reform ideas. We're going to probably do some stuff, at least start to do some stuff fairly quickly. So if you have some ideas, get them to Davis. Where are you, Davis? I lost you. There he is. Get them to Davis. We are hiring another person to assist Davis. He's going to be lead. Somebody said, are you leaving? Because they knew we were looking. No, he's not leaving. It's just there's so much to do that I don't believe that one staffer can handle it all. I wondered if one congressman can handle it all. But we're going to get some assistance there. But get those ideas to us as quickly as you can, because I really do want to do some FDA reform to try to streamline things. And there's so much I don't know, and I acknowledge that, and I need experts to help me, and let's figure it out. And it doesn't matter to me if they're Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. If they're good ideas, I'll go for them. I just like to see those ideas, and I do think, and I will tell you that I think the FDA has done a fabulous job. So I don't mean when we say reform that we need to, blow it up or that they've done a bad job. But I do believe, and this is one that I do feel strongly about, I do believe that they have operated under the shadow of the thalidomide problem, which was legitimate, and they changed everything, as they should have. But today we're looking at so many rare diseases where we might have possibilities, and there isn't any real cure, or there isn't any real treatment out there. And I have, probably if you watched the hearing, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, but I actually know 2 different families affected by Huntington's disease. It's devastating. There is finally a drug out there that does some alleviation, but there's still not, we don't understand what causes it. You look at Lou Gehrig's ALS, and there's so many different variations of that, if we're going to meet the gold standard that was put in place because of a nausea medicine, we're never going to get these problems solved. And having had several close friends who died from ALS, because apparently I'm in a hot spot, who knew? I didn't know until I got on the committee, and I asked questions. There are ALS hotspots, and I live in one of them. And until you've known a few people, almost everybody with that disease that I have met, I won't say all, but almost everybody, would be willing to take the risk on some kind of a new medication. So the FDA, it's not just right to try, it's a little bit more than that. We need to figure out a way to streamline the process in those areas. Now, nausea? No. I want the gold standard if it's a nausea medicine. If I'm taking something for indigestion, whether I've caused it to myself or somebody else has caused it for me or some food has got me, I want that to have the gold standard. The FDA is absolutely right, because those are things that, I might be uncomfortable with, I can deal with it. But on things like Huntington's and ALS, I think we've got to have a different model. There are all kinds of people that are bringing me ideas for different ways that we can do things and do different silos. NIH, I think we've got to go and take a good look. They're huge, again. Just because I think there needs to be reforms does not mean I think that they're villainous or that they're bad or that they do bad work. I think they do some amazing things. But, and I like Dr. Fauci, I have no personal animus to him, but when he says in a deposition, when we were doing stuff, when I was on the oversight subcommittee on the health, on energy and commerce, and he says that if, this was in a deposition, if you had told me before COVID-19 that they were doing research in Wuhan, I would have thought it was Wuhan University. I'd never heard of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, he was there a long time. It's a huge organization, allergy and infectious disease. I think he was doing the best he could. I understand he didn't know that. I'm not saying that that makes him a bad guy. It just means that job is too big and maybe we need to go back in and look at the organization. Because in reality, allergy and infectious disease are two different things. Now, you know, it's healthcare, they're related, but they're two different areas. And if it's too big for him to even know where they're doing the research, by the way, they had a level 2 lab. This is always one of my fun things, is that this is why you got to pay attention to this stuff and have oversight, particularly if it's foreign, but also domestic. They had a level 2 lab when I think that even the data they had then showed it should have been in a level 3 lab to do the research on coronavirus. But it was brought home to me even more when I went to see a cardiologist in Roanoke. I'm fine, but I had a little blip last August and nothing else. But while we're there, we started talking. He says, "Hey, you want to go upstairs? I have a level 2 lab upstairs." The sole practicing cardiologist in Roanoke, Virginia has a level 2 lab, and we were doing coronavirus research in it. We got to have few reforms. Again, there are people who would say, "Oh, this was some kind of evil intent," and I don't believe that at all. I just believe when you have large agencies that go without aggressive oversight for long periods of time, and they don't examine themselves closely, that things will happen, and it's our job as members of Congress to try to solve it. PBMs, I got pharmacies in the rural areas driving like flies. Part of it is because of what PBMs are doing, but PBMs have a place, they have a role. I'm not 100% anti-PBM. What should we do? I don't know. I don't have enough transparency. I can't give you the answer on how to solve the problem because I don't have the information, which is why I want more information from PBMs, and I want them to be more transparent about when the medicine comes in and when the medicine goes out and what the various discounts are for different insurance companies. I want to see all of that because I can't solve a problem that I can't see, that I can't figure out, that I don't have data on. Current state of play. Got to get through the reauthorization bills. Then I want to get to some other bills. We got to look at dish cuts again, which hurt my district terribly, so I don't want them. But we got to figure out if there's a better way to finance rural hospitals to make sure that they're getting the help that they need. Maybe that's a special program for maternity care in rural areas where we don't have it in a lot of places now. Telehealth is huge. It is revolutionizing. It has the potential to bring health care to the most remote parts of my district. Big supporter. In fact, I had the House version. Somehow all my bills get sold by the Senate. But I had the House version of the first telehealth bill, which was the telestroke bill, probably about a decade